All right, welcome to the show. I got with me Mark Turcotte from Guardian Radio Network. Man, how the heck are you?
I'm good, man. Good, good. Glad you reached out to me, man. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you about podcasting. I think essentially is what we're here for, right? How to
Yeah,
get you started up in podcasting.
that if we get past talking about Destiny, because I'm a pretty big fan, so hopefully we'll get to some podcasting. But
Yes.
man, uh, dude, I absolutely love your show, man. Like I just typed in on the podcast app, Destiny, and you guys showed up immediately, and I was like, dude, I listened to back episodes and then just went to town. So I'd be willing to bet I had at least one 10-hour day where I listened to your show
There's
for
tons of
10
them, I know.
hours.
And some of those old episodes, man, are pretty long too. I mean, it's funny. The game's out now. We've shortened the show, and there's tons of stuff to talk about. But like way back when there was literally nothing to talk about, we were going on for 2 hours. Back then, which is crazy to think about. So
But basically, I want to let people know you can consume 10 hours of Guardian Radio and walk away from it.
it's possible. I don't, even though unbeknownst to us, sometimes we listen to it like, oh man, what are we talking about on that show? Especially those earlier ones, man. You hear the stuff that we were saying back then, it was like, no, none of that lived up at all. But still, we love the game. It's a great game. But yeah, some of the things we were talking about, just talking crazy, out of our heads, saying this thing's going to be the size of Skyrim times 10, things like that. And everything we wanted the game to be. But that was the fun of it, man. That I have a lot of people that come to us and they say, they love those earlier episodes because at the time we were so, just we didn't know what the game was going to be, so it was fun to just, people they say they would listen in their car and just dream about what Destiny could be, and that's honestly that's where the show started, and still that's kind of what the show is today. But yeah, we have fun doing it, man. It's crazy. It's a really really fun show to do, definitely. We have a good time.
When you guys had Deej on, he was saying that you guys had one of your old co-hosts or whatever was like, oh, we're going to be able to drive for like 2 hours on our Sparrow.
There's even video of that. If you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Guardians of D, that first E3, it was E3 2013, we went into the Activision booth and everybody was eating lunch back there. And there's actually us sitting at the table with Deej while he's eating pizza. Like we sat down, and I'm like, Deej, you really want to do the interview now? He's like, yeah, that's fine, it's fine. And we sit down with him, and yeah, like right on camera, you hear Derek, our old co-host, actually talking about, I don't know if he exactly said that or whatever it is, but just talking about something crazy. And Dee's just looking at him like, yeah, well, this is really what the game is, and kind of going down a different path. But yeah, it's been fun, man. Guardian Radio is something, we're very proud of it, obviously. I mean, the success that it's had, especially since the game is launched, has just been incredible for us. But, it's kind of been a long time coming, I say. I mean, I've been doing this thing, man, for 6 years now. So to finally have one of the shows that I'm a part of become, pretty successful and popular, especially on iTunes, and that has been awesome. So.
Yeah. Well, I give you props, man. It's a great show. You guys do a great job, and I really enjoy it. I kind of want to back up a little bit. I want to get to know Mark from where his history with gaming is, man. Like, where did what
Well, I was a little boy back in 1985 when I opened up that NES with the Rob the Robot and Gyromite, and actually opened up Excitebike first before I opened up the Nintendo Entertainment System. Pissed they can stand I didn't bring it to me, but no, man. I'm from New York, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. And when I moved down here, I graduated college, moved down here. And I had some buddies in New York. We were big gamers together, and the only way we could keep in touch was Halo 2 through Xbox Live. So that's what we would do. And I started hearing these things about podcasts, and it was right around, I think it would have been '06 I moved here. So podcasts were kind of just starting to come in their own. iTunes was getting big, and I found Podtacular, which was a Halo podcast. First podcast I ever listened to, and I was like, oh, I'm a big Halo fan. Let me listen to this. And the two hosts at the time, I thought it was cool what they were doing, and they, got invited out to I think it was either the Halo 2 or it might even been Halo 3, launch event, and I was like, oh, how cool would that be to be able to do that? So I was like, you know what? I play these video games. I'm friends with my buddies in New York. We could do this. We could do it over the internet and do a show. So we started our own show, and went for like 10 episodes, and literally nobody but our moms listened to the show, and just to, give us a couple of downloads, which was terrible. So I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm like, we need to find an audience. So what I did, just because I'm a crazy person, is I started calling every website I could possibly find. And this is a pro tip for anybody out there who's into sales, because my dad actually is a salesman. He didn't tell me this, but he does the same thing. you call a department, like the wrong department, that you know they want to talk to you. So like I would call the advertising department and say, hey, this is Mark so-and-so. I'm calling to talk to fill in the blank with the editor-in-chief of the website. And they would say, oh, this is the advertising department. And I would say, oh, well, can you kick me over to him? And they say, sure. And they just, boop, hit the button, and you get like right to the guy's desk, And so that's what I was doing, just kind of this guerrilla warfare to get caught up with a website. And we ended up at the time hooking up with this site called avault.com, the Adrenaline Vault, which in the late 90s was a pretty big PC gaming site. And that's just kind of where it kicked it off. The guy just saw something in us and took us on, and we started doing the show there. And he was, the gentleman over there was somewhat into the industry, so we knew a lot of folks, started throwing these interviews at us. So my very first interview ever, this was right when Fallout 3 came out, was one of the lead designers of Fallout 3, Emil Pagliarulo. And so here we are, these three dudes who knew, we're just kind of gamers, fun gamers thrown into this interview, this industry interview, having no clue what we were doing. And it just took off from there. So we were doing all these interviews and that industry interviews, which was cool because that's what led me to go into my first E3, which was, I guess, back in like '08. So that was fun, getting in the industry, being able to go to E3 and, have all the stars in your eyes, seeing all that stuff. And from there, and I'm sorry I'm going to be a little bit long-winded here, man, because my story is crazy in podcasting. But did AVault, and then from there we did a web show. One of my co-hosts and I did a show called Play and Trade TV. We did a video show, kind of like how GameStop has the videos in store. We did Play and Trade TV, which was a show they were showing up in Play and Trade stores, which is like an aftermarket show, which you probably, I don't know if you have a Play and Trade near you, Josh, but it's retro gaming. They have a lot of Nintendo games, Super Nintendo games. So it was cool. We would talk about the hot releases and then pull out, like, we have clips of me in the stores running around. Like I had a boxed copy of like The Legend of Zelda. You see me hold it up and it, does the Zelda sound and flashes and everything like that. So it was cool, doing that show. Yes. And that all kind of fell through just because the show for Play and Trade, it just wasn't worthwhile for them to carry that on. So then we went and hooked up with Game Insider magazine, which is still up and running. And actually right now I'm kind of coming back to them, starting to do some reviews in that. And we hooked up there, started doing a show called Game Reverb. And we did this, this was probably 4 or 5 years, this whole time frame of all these other shows. But in the back of my mind, I always had the idea of Podtacular, and I wanted to do a game-specific podcast. Like whenever an MMO would be coming out, like Guild Wars 2, I would listen to a Guild Wars 2 podcast, and that big hype, the big build-up to that game coming out, or more recently, like Elder Scrolls Online, when that's coming out. I just enjoy that kind of fanboy talk and talking about what a game could be in the lore of it, and so I always wanted to do that. And even Borderlands, the original Borderlands, I remember pitching to some guy who had a Borderlands website, like, let me do this Borderlands show, because I saw it at E3, and I'm like, this game is going to be great, and it never came through. Well, when Bungie announced Destiny last February, it was just like, that's it. I'm going back to when I started this whole thing, a Halo fan. Bungie's an amazing developer. They love their community. This is it. So within a week after them announcing Destiny, like officially announcing it, because there was kind of rumblings of that in the industry, we launched our first episode. And it's just been going on from there. And, over time, I ended up leaving Game Insider to just do Guardian Radio. And then in the meantime, I hooked up with this website, geeknation.com, and I've actually kind of stepped away from doing that right now, and we're focusing on Guardian Radio and what we're building there. And, over the last year and a half, I think we just did episode 86, it was this past week, and, the community that we've built around Guardian Radio is just incredible, man. And so, to come from, starting in kind of on the fanboy side of it, getting into the journalistic side, and then ending up back on the fandom side of it is just awesome. And I've never had an audience on any of the shows that I've done like we do with Guardian Radio. And I don't know if it's a testament to just the Bungie community or a testament just to what those shows can be, but it's a hell of a lot of fun to do, man. And yeah, that's it. That's my long-winded story, man. That's me in a nutshell, I guess.
From Excitebike to podcasting about Destiny.
You got it. Yep.
That's Mark right there.
Crazy, man. So yeah, it's been nuts.
Well, very cool, dude. I want to get into the podcasting. You started like when it was pretty fresh, dude. What were you doing? What were you doing for like a microphone? And
for the very first podcast we ever recorded, actually didn't record my audio. It recorded my co-host Chris' audio, and I was using the Rock Band 1 microphone set in a coffee cup, and that is no joke, man. That is completely truth. For whatever I had a Mac at the time, and I still record on a Mac. And we use this program called Audio Hijack Pro where you can hijack any audio. And for whatever reason, I didn't record that Rock Band's microphone, and it didn't record it, but it was literally in the coffee cup. And that was we had to go back and like record the episode again and, laugh at the same jokes. Because, the first time they're hilarious. And the second time you want to say them again because they were that good, but they're still, they're not going to hit as good. But that's just what we did. And, at the time, USB condenser mics were very, few and far between, and the really quality ones are really expensive. And so I bought this one, and it was kind of all right. And it wasn't until we did the Play and Trade show that we kind of came into a little bit more money that we were able to buy better equipment. But actually, I've recently downgraded my equipment and picked up now the Yeti, the Blue Yeti that a lot of people use. It's a fantastic condenser microphone. It's a USB mic. But it works great, and I've done all my editing on the Mac in GarageBand, so it's still to this day works fantastic. And that was way back, whatever that was, '08 that we started doing it. That I used the same program then because it works fine. But there wasn't a lot of stuff out there for podcasting. To create your RSS feed for a podcast was kind of just a crazy way. So I had to invest in a program, that you just kind of automatically did it on the Mac, and it would set it all up. And when your first podcast appears on iTunes, it's like the best feeling, like yes. Yeah. And then nobody downloads it, and you're like, oh man, like that's the most frustrating thing I think about podcasting is trying to capture that audience, and especially when you start out, it's tough. It's definitely tough, man. To gather an audience for sure.
So I want to get into audience stuff. I want to talk a little more about just the hardware side of things, because you do something that I had never heard of before, and you're basically your show you're airing it live on Twitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is it also live on YouTube, or is it just picking up?
No, we're not doing it on YouTube. I know if you go, I believe Twitch now has a new thing built into it where you can kind of embed on YouTube when you're streaming to your channel.
Okay.
If someone is watching our YouTube video, I think on while we're recording live, it'll give them a little icon will pop up and say, hey, these guys are streaming on Twitch, and then it'll kind of link them over. But no, it's not doing it on YouTube right now. And I was kind of hoping, I was kind of one of those weird people that was kind of like, hey, maybe Google will buy Twitch, and then that'll just kind of bleed in the Hangouts together, and everything will just kind of come together as one. But with Amazon picking them up, it's obviously changed that a little bit. But Twitch is great. We love it. It's we stream as if we're playing Destiny, because that's the one thing. Twitch is a little bit weird now. They've added a new thing where you can say you're a gaming talk show, which we don't use that. We still say we're playing Destiny because that's just where we started, a year and a half ago or whatever, streaming to it. And so, I've been waiting for Twitch one day to reach out and say, you're not really playing Destiny. But our recent show, since the game's out, we are actually streaming the game to the channel while we're doing it live. We're all running around just various areas of either the tower, or we keep going into the raid, so you can have up to 6 people kind of running around Venus. So we're not really in the raid, we're just on Venus running around. But we do that. Some people like to just see us, being goofballs, in the game. Sure. So that's fun. But yeah, as of right now, we're not streaming to YouTube, because I don't think with Hangouts you can't technically do that. I think we could if we did some, like the Mac has programs you can buy where you can create a virtual camera. So I think if we hooked up, I use a Elgato HD to capture, if I had that virtual camera program make the Elgato think it's a camera, that may be able to stream to Google. But whether or not they would allow that, I have no idea. That's something that they may kind of put the kibosh on. I'm not sure. So.
Gotcha. So let's break it down for me. I know you're on the PS4.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're on the PS4. You're streaming that to Twitch. How you're then? Are you capturing? Break down the setup for me. How does this show?
So here's what I do. When I set up, I have my MacBook is to my right, recording all the audio. We use Skype, so everybody's coming through on Skype, and then I have my microphone hooked up to that also, and that captures just the audio for the actual podcast. Because that's one thing we've always made a point to say, is that when we're streaming to Twitch, we're actually streaming the live recording of the podcast. We're still always a podcast first, and not necessarily the live show. I mean, the live show has just become kind of its own thing. But it's still the audio is our focus. But then I have a PC hooked up that's in front of me, which is kind of what I'm looking at right now. It's my monitors right behind where we are. That's my PC hooked up, and I use XSplit to pull in my Elgato, my gaming feed, which I also have off to my right here, which I guess it might be mirrored on the Hangout. I have another monitor right here that's my PS4, so I can see Destiny up here in my PS4, streaming over into my PC into XSplit. XSplit has that set up, and then I have my web browser, so I can see the Twitch chat right in front of me, and XSplit is what's streaming to Twitch. Now, I also have an XSplit, another Skype, basically another version of Skype running with myself kind of hooked into the conversation, muted, so there's no microphone on Skype here, but it's picking up the whole conversation, including my microphone that's literally right next to me, but that's streaming out to Twitch. So I'm literally signed into Skype on two ends, one for the recording and so everybody can hear me on my quality mic, and then I'm also hooked on to Skype on my PC, which is what's streaming out to Twitch, because that's gathering the whole conversation. And then XSplit is what we use to stream to Twitch to our PC, because I don't know if you've ever used XSplit, or what do you use, PC or Mac to record?
I'm a Mac guy.
Okay.
And anything I do on Twitch is just through the Xbox One.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
I don't. And because having a Mac, the capture card we have, it doesn't support doing live streams. You can capture footage, but I don't have the I got it for my son so he could capture Call of Duty footage, and he can just set it in his room and hit the button on it. It's the AverMedia Live, which is it's a great little tool, but as far as trying to live stream, I want to live stream with my wife playing Mario Kart, and we just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, that's why I invested in this PC. I mean, it's a gaming PC, but it's a higher end PC. But I also, to stream, it was for Guardian Radio is why I finally invested in it, so that we could do the stream that we do now, where you see the game, but then you still have all the little scrolling bar. XSplit is a fantastic program. I want to say it's $50 or $60 for the year. It might even be $100, and basically you're paying for the license to use it. But they give you, I think it's 12 frames, and each frame you can go in there and you can pull in webcams, programs, put in title bars, put in pictures, and you literally just with a click of a mouse, you just click the scene. So I go in and set up the scenes before we go live. So like I have the one scene that's our main page. I have one scene that's our intro. I have one scene that's maybe screenshots from the game, things like that, and it just makes it so easy to do it. So that's one thing. If you want to get away from the Hangout per se and more customize it, XSplit is fantastic. And I know a lot of that's, if you go to Twitch and you see any PC gamers, or half the people you see that are really doing it with, subscription buttons and stuff on their pages, they're using probably XSplit, because, I mean, it's so user-friendly, and it's the best. I mean, it literally is the best thing to use. A lot of people also use, I think it's Open Source Broadcaster, OSB. I think Adobe makes that, and that is actually available on the Mac. But I've never really messed around with that. That's something you could probably check into. We can talk about that after the argument. Maybe try and get you the link. But that's something people say is great because it doesn't use up as much memory on your system, and even I guess that's even over on the PC thing, and it's free. So you don't need to pay for it. It's just completely free to use that.
Yeah, I have it. I spent probably 6 hours trying to get my Mac to
do it,
to work with the capture card we have, and I finally figured out that it just did not. They're working on it.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have it they only have it for PC, and I was like, I was ready to pull my hair out. I was getting so furious. I can literally see it on my screen, but
being a Mac user, it sucks trying to stream right now. That it's just. I mean, I wish they would create a version of XSplit that was just as fully functional and works just as easy on Mac. I don't know why they wouldn't, because there is a whole audience out there for it, but for whatever reason they don't. So
yeah, well, whatever software they recommend with the Elgato works for Mac. Like it has the
one that comes with it, like the. There is one that comes with the Elgato that we use, and you can just stream directly from it, but you can't put in like all the neat effects and put in all images and titles. And so at that point, it's like if you want that, then you want to go with something like XSplit. Where if you're just looking to stream it, don't even bother using the Elgato. Just use your, like you said, your Xbox One or your PS4. Just use it because it's built into the system itself.
Yeah.
So there's no point in even doing that.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. I wondered how you guys did it. I didn't know if Twitch like archived your video and then you threw it up on the.
That is how we do it, because Twitch then does actually anything you do on Twitch, it keeps your past broadcasts, and then you link your YouTube account. So I just go in and kind of trim off the edges of where, because we usually when we go live, we talk to the audience a little bit and say, okay, we're getting ready to go, and kind of get everybody in, get them past the ad, things like that, and then you can just kind of clip it, save it as what's called a highlight, and then export that to YouTube. So that's how our shows are popping up on YouTube, is because we're just exporting the highlight that we created on Twitch because you link your accounts, which is cool too, because that just makes it, there's no really post-editing outside of just trimming off the edges, and everything you see was done live on Twitch, which is cool. So you don't have to go back and put in your intro and all that stuff. It's just everything's live. So that's kind of neat, which is a whole separate way to podcast. I mean, we're doing this show live right now, but that's a whole different angle when you're podcasting live, because if you screw up or anything on air, it's it's out there, man. It's on the net. Which for us, I mean, we've been having, Bungie employees on lately, and that is definitely a concern. They don't want to slip up. You don't want to say something or ask them something, put them on the spot too much. So it's definitely a different way to podcast, doing it live rather than recording it just off the air.
Yeah, for sure. I had the show that went up on my the podcast today. The dude had his little kid got up early and he's like, "I need my cereal," and so he's like, "I'll be right back, dude. I gotta go get Junior some cereal and put him in front of cartoons." So
that's funny. So you don't have to wear pants, man, when you podcast. That's one thing, right? Maybe I'm not even wearing pants right now. Nobody knows. You can't see it. All you see is my head.
If it was warmer, I may not be wearing pants. It's too cold right now. So
you're in Seattle, right?
I'm about an hour north.
Oh man, it's gotta be freezing there. Crazy.
So it's I think it was in the 20s.
Wow.
So, but that's not normal for this time of year. It's just unusual.
Cold front, man. It's like killing the country right now. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, all right. I've been listening to some of your other shows, and you'd mentioned possibly picking up an Xbox One. Did that happen yet?
No, it hasn't. Little Turks has asked for an Xbox One for Christmas from Santa.
I got you.
And my guess is Santa's going to bring Little Turks an Xbox One, and maybe me too.
Oh.
Well, just one, but, yeah, he wants an Xbox One. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Good, because I'd love to run some Destiny with you eventually.
Yeah, man.
So
definitely.
This generation, man, it split up. My crew of guys, like half of them went PS4, and I was too much of a fan of Halo. I couldn't.
Man, I've always been an Xbox person, always, and I owned a PS2. I think when what was the Grand Theft Auto? It might have been San Andreas. No, because San Andreas came out on the Vice City. When Vice City came out, you can only get it at the time on the PS2. So I bought a PS2, played that, and then ended up trading it in and just stuck with the Xbox. And 360 that came out. Eventually bought a PS3. And this generation, we went to E3 right when the two consoles were getting set to come out. And just that whole mindset of, just what was going on with Microsoft at the time and their miscommunication on so many things, on the blunders, and everybody we talked to that dealt with, the PlayStation 4 was just like, this is a platform of choice, it's more powerful, and, saying all these things. And then, couple in with that the fact that I'm the host of a Destiny podcast, that's where the content exclusive is. I'm like, that'll be the one I jump on first, and then sure. and always I've owned all the consoles every generation, so I'm going to get an Xbox One. There was no doubt in my mind. It was just which do I jump to first, and of course just really Destiny just pushed me over. It was just PS4 of course because of the content that's there, but.
Well, if you do get a One, the Halo Master Chief Collection will probably be working by Christmas.
I hope so. I know. How terrible is that? How is that possible? I do not understand how they could just let that happen, man. The fact that you can't go into these games, which really even before it came out, you still couldn't play those games online, right? So I guess we're all still kind of in the same spot. You could play the campaign, but you couldn't play Halo 2 online at that point. So
right.
I guess we're still rolling there. But yeah, that's crazy. That's bad. Really bad.
So I interview a lot of game developers, and a lot of people are wanting to get eyes on their new game and that kind of thing. And I think podcasts are actually a great way. They're a great marketing tool, right?
Oh yeah.
But you have to have an audience, and I'm wondering, you've been around the block, and I'm wondering if you can give us some pointers on reaching an audience and it takes time. There's no doubt about that. This isn't hey, I'm on iTunes and look, nothing online happens that way. You have to put the work in, and you've got to be willing to go, man, this is 2 months in, and I'm only hitting this amount of downloads. Should I throw in the towel? But you gotta just buck up and keep on going, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't get frustrated. I mean, of course your podcast is going to come out. You can't expect to be getting, thousands of downloads day one. Not even your first month, or probably even your first 6 months. I mean, it's tough. It's a hard road to get people to, listen to your podcast. But, best thing is just go online, go to forums where people may be interested in what, you have to offer. Unfortunately, and it really, I'm the perfect example of that. Is I did the general gaming podcast for years. Literally years. And I said early on, the old show we were interviewing game developers. I had on when Fallout 3 came out, my first guest, I had one of the developers on, and we maybe had a couple hundred people listening to the show at the time. And you would think that people would want to hear it, but because there was no audience for that show, people just didn't listen, didn't care. And right now, with it being so easy to produce a podcast and get it up on iTunes and that, the market is just flooded with all these just general gaming podcasts because everybody has their own opinion and everyone wants to do their own show. So my advice to people, and why I say I'm the perfect example of it, is it wasn't until I pigeonholed what I was delivering to an audience that I found the audience, right? We launched a week after Destiny was announced. Nobody was doing a Destiny podcast. So those early months when someone was coming to look for a podcast, we were the only ones there. There was nobody else. So we started just building the audience. And luckily for us, too, Bungie's just very cool. They reached out to us, I think, the second or third day. The first episode was out. We instantly got communication from Deej, the community manager. And since then, I've just had a great relationship with Bungie. And, that really is my advice to people is figure out what it is that makes you different. Not that it's just you and your friend that, you go to school with every day or that, you've been friends for years. Figure it out. Like, you need to find that niche thing that you can deliver that no other podcast can deliver, and then you will start to find, I think, your success in your audience. It's just hard, man, right now to do a show. Like, how many podcasts today, this week, probably came out that are talking about Master Chief Collection and Assassin's Creed Unity? There's probably tons of them out there, and it's just hard, to tap into it. So, what makes your show different than the other one? That's what you need to figure out. And once you find that, that's when you can really start saying, okay, go to the different forums for, where you think that audience may be, and start posting it up on the forums. Create a fake forum account. I mean, I did all that crap. Everybody does that stuff to get yourself out there. And just, the other thing I would tell people too is don't be afraid to ask game companies for stuff. That was the one thing that I was shocked when I was with A-Vault. Eventually, the guy who was hooking up our interviews just said, all right, well, you kind of take it over. Interview indie game developers. Interview them, man. Like you said, podcasting is a great way to market something. Those people want their stuff out there, whether it's 20 people listening or 1,000 people listening. Go after those those people because they're willing to come on the show and talk. Believe me, even a company like Activision or Ubisoft, as big and huge as they seem, why not ask? Find out who's covering, Dragon Age Inquisition. Well, who's the PR rep? Email them. What's the worst they're going to say? No? Maybe they'll send you some assets or something to put up on your website. That's cool, right? You created that relationship, and then you're moving forward from there, and just keep it going. And, I think you said it, Josh, like, do not give up. Just keep it. If you want to do it, just keep on doing it because, eventually, as long as you keep at it and as long as you're having fun doing it. I mean, that really is the biggest thing, too, is make sure you're having fun because, we here on Guardian Radio have kind of come to, a turning point here recently. Where not that we weren't having fun doing what we were doing, but it's like, all right, what do we do now? The whole show was built on hype and the game coming out, and now the game's out. So now the show has just changed, and it's like, do we want to keep doing this? Are we having fun doing it? What can we do to keep it fun? And we are all having fun, so we're going to continue doing it. But if you find that it's just you're getting too obsessed with, I'm not getting the downloads and this kind of sucks, and then don't do it. Find something else you want to do. And even in podcasting, if podcasting is still your thing, stick with it, but maybe find something else to podcast about. And I don't know, that's my advice to people is just find what it is about your show specifically that can be different than all the other shows out there. Because it wasn't until I did that we found our audience. And, here we were a couple weeks ago. We were the #1 video game podcast on iTunes. Never in a million years would I have thought a show about one game, not only just my show, any video game podcast about one game, not IGN, not Giant Bomb, not any of those things. They weren't #1. It was Guardian Radio. Of all the freaking shows, was #1, dude.
Yeah.
Incredible. Like, that is just, and it's just a testament to there are people out there rabid to hear about Destiny, good or bad. Whether they like the game or they hate the game. People wanted to tune in. I always laugh and tell our guys, like, I think if you watch Private Parts with Howard Stern, and they say, like, he has all these listeners, but like 60% of his listeners or whatever they say at the time were people who didn't like him, but they were just tuning in to hear what he had to say. It was like that negative sound. Right. And I mean, we've had people tuning into our show, and we get emails of people saying, like, how can you talk about this game being good? It's garbage and it's trash. And I'm like, but you downloaded the show, didn't you? So you listened to the show. So that's enough for me, man. You listen to the show. So yeah, that's something you need to find, I think, for your show, definitely, to make it successful for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you talked a little bit about target audience, right? So you got to decide who you want to reach out to, but at the same time, passion and what you're excited about is a whole other thing. Like, I've been podcasting for almost a year. My first podcast, I've kind of just burned out on it, man. Like, I wasn't engaging with people. I wasn't that excited about it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna do a podcast about gaming. I didn't even know what it looked like. This thing is still shaping, right? Like
Right.
like I picked Nintendo 64 because my wife and I have fond memories of playing that together, and it's just tied to gaming. So I'm like, here we go, right?
Just
It's
do it. Yeah.
terrible branding. If people search for game developer stuff, they're probably not going to find my website, right? Or
Right. Yeah.
my podcast. If they search for N64, they're probably going to find it and get pissed that I'm not talking about the N64 in every
Yeah. Right.
episode.
Yeah.
I'm talking with game developers, but I had to just start. I had to just do it, right?
Yep.
And it'll evolve, and I may have to do some rebranding and everything, and I'm cool with that. And I don't. At the same time, I'm like, you know what? I got fond memories of the N64 with my wife, and
Yeah.
if enough people end up liking the show and spread the word for me, then maybe I don't have to worry
Well, I'll
about
tell
it.
you, man, I don't, in your case, there's not, I mean, there are, I believe, some other retro game podcasts per se, but nobody that I know of is a retro game podcast coupled in with, game developer interviews like that in itself. Like, well, that's what when you reached out to me and I kind of saw what you were, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, man. Like, that's pretty neat. Went back and listened to some of the episodes. Like, that in itself is unique, is niche, if you want to say. And there, I guarantee you're going to find an audience out there that likes it. Now, also with that, just hearing you talk and hearing your voice, I mean, you have kind of that radio voice, and that's one thing. The one thing you have to make sure you do.
And face. Let's get that right too.
That's right. You got the face. You got a face for radio. Wait a minute. We're on the Hangout, right? What I tell people is, when the first 30 seconds of your podcast, don't be sitting there saying like, or hear your dog barking in the background, because again, there's so many podcasts. You hear that in the first 30 seconds, you've lost listeners. You're not going to get them, so you have to capture them in the very first beat, basically. So even if it comes down to you and your friends doing 4 or 5 podcasts until you feel more comfortable to then start going out and promoting it. Don't just record your first episode and push it out to everybody, because your first episode, you're not going to be a pro at it. I mean, that's just, you can't. It's like, you can't hop on a bike for the first time in your life and go down the street. Like, you need to get used to it. So don't just promote it just because you created it, like right away. Like, take the time, listen back, let other people listen to feedback. That's the best thing you can do. And the one thing I do, and I'm sure, people hearing me, I mean, literally, I have diarrhea of the mouth. I just talk and talk and talk and talk. Talk to yourself. Like, as crazy as that sounds, like, go when you're driving to work or whatever, just talk to yourself. Think of how you want to do intros on your show. Think of things that you want to say, points you want to make, and just talk out loud. Like, that's one thing that, for me, I mean, I'm not a radio broadcaster. I've never went to school for radio or anything, but just literally driving to work every day, talking about things, and, people are probably driving by me like, who the hell is this guy? What's he doing? That just in itself gets you used to having a conversation and completing points and things like that. And that's also advice that I'd give to people, is make sure you don't have to have a voice for radio per se, but you need to be able to convey your point rather than just say, yeah, the game's pretty cool, man. Yeah, it's awesome. Like, that's you're not going to get an audience, and not to put anybody down for that, but I mean, sometimes you hear podcasts like that, and it's like, man, and like, there's no passion, right? I mean, the people like that, there's no passion for it. It's just, oh, a podcast might be cool to do. It's like, well, if you're going to do it, be passionate about it and try and do everything you can to make that thing successful. And I mean, really, that's probably why our show is where it is today, because I just didn't give up. I mean, I told you I was calling websites to the advertising department. Who does that? Like, that was it's just crazy, but it was because I had the passion and I wanted to make it successful. And you do everything you need to do. It took me a damn long time to find something successful, but it's the same thing in your case, man. You're doing your show and you don't want to give up. You want it to be successful, and so you do whatever you got to do, to get it to that point. So, it's
including killing myself 5 days a week.
Yeah, 5 days a week, man. That's crazy. So actually, when I was doing Geek Nation, I did it for about 8 months. I do it every single day. It was like a 10 to 12 minute show every day, just about the news. And that actually, believe it or not, was pretty easy, because towards the end of Geek Nation, that show turned into me by myself for 45 minutes, just talking out loud to myself like I would in my car. And that's harder to do, because you're just trying to just spill and talk about whatever it is, and keeping a conversation going that long is tough. And where just doing the news was easy. It was just facts. But see, I wasn't getting out of that what I was getting out of Guardian Radio. I do Guardian Radio, and we get emails and tweets and all this stuff, where I'm doing a show about the news, just straight news, not even really opinion. I wasn't doing really any opinion stuff with Geek Nation Gaming News. And I got nothing back, because the news is the news. You know what? Nobody cared. No one's gonna send me an email about a news story because I didn't really give an opinion on it. I'm just spitting the news out, and that was kind of boring. So I was like, well, I don't really want to do that anymore. So
Chicken Lord, he emailed you a few times.
he did. Yeah, Chicken Lord did. Yeah, well, you know why he did? Because he would watch my Twitch streams. He's one of our Guardian Radio listeners, and I would say, hey, I need an email. Or Chicken Lord, send me an email, please. And then like even I had another one from I think Bell. Bell sent me one. I'm like, Bell, send me an email, please, so I can have something. So maybe people who aren't Guardian Radio listeners listening to that show will say, hey, I could send an email and be on the show. Nope.
Yeah.
All the listeners of that show were my Guardian Radio listeners, and that was it. So it's yeah.
But there's a tip in there, man. That's that's reaching out to the audience you have and saying, hey,
true.
Like, somebody that you may know personally or may know better on Twitter or whatever, and just be like, I need some help. Like, shoot me an email so that I can read something, so that people can see that, because sometimes, I mean, it's like, it's like somebody raises their hand during a, like with a comedian on stage or something. He's like, I need somebody, and it's like finally somebody raises their hand
Somebody
or whatever
finally
the case
does it,
is.
yeah.
It's like, and then once that happens, once that ice is broken, then you can start to get more engagement with your fans.
And how
stuff.
great of a feeling is that too, man? The first time you get like that first email or that first like somebody favoriting a tweet that you sent out or a retweet. It's just like the best feeling. Like there's one person in this world out there who listened to what I did and they loved it. Like that is just the best feeling as a podcaster. So when you get that for the first time, you're gonna love it. And then right there, that's what hooked me initially. Is like once you finally had somebody send you something and enjoy what you did, you're just hooked. After that, you get hooked to it.
Yeah, you get that review on iTunes, and you're just like,
yes,
it gets you pumped. It helps keep, it kind of helps fuel that fire,
Yep.
But, well, dude, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Like, what I think I just randomly shot a tweet at you on yesterday or the day before, and I was like, maybe. And then like 4 a.m., I'm like, hey, Mark got back to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love just talking about podcasting. We actually, the show too is we have the Guardian Radio Network, which is our network of really Guardian Radio startup. But then we have some other Destiny podcasts on there, Warlock School, TTL Party Chat, all the shows that are over there. And those shows, are our network, but we're also part of the podcast network. It's the podcast.com, and that's actually who we didn't create that. We met up with them later on, and that's actually the same network that Podtacular is a part of. So it's kind of like full circle for me, like where I started, and then we hooked up with those guys. But I've done one show with them, and they recorded one other episode before we came on about podcasting. So if anybody's interested in just the idea, the mindset behind doing a podcast, check those out. If you go to the podcast, it's podcast with a K.com, you can find them. I think the name of those episodes are like why we do this or why we do it. Or something like that. You can find those over there because it's definitely great to just talk with other podcasters about like how do you do it, why do you do it. It's just something that once you get a passion for it, you love doing it. And honestly, for me, I went on a stretch over these last 6 years of I think it was like 3 months that I didn't do podcasting, and like you feel empty. Like part of it is not even just doing the show itself; it's getting together every Monday night with the same crew of guys. Even though we're not in the same room, we're all across the country, and I mean, in our case, we're around the world with Bife over in England. Just getting together with that crew of guys, and you feel like you just talked to each other earlier that day because we did. We talked through Facebook Messenger or through Twitter, and without that, if we ever stopped doing it and it was gone, it's your hobby, it's your thing. You would feel lost without it. So that's one thing that podcasting, I think, regardless of your audience, just getting together with your friends, having fun, talking about something that everyone's passionate about, it's that in itself is rewarding enough. So if you always keep that mindset of let's do something that's fun, that we're passionate about, and keep up with it, you're going to be successful, even if it's just for yourself to have fun. That's all really what it all amounts to. Because it's hard to monetize. You asked me here in the beginning before we went on the air, like, are we monetizing this? And I'll tell you, if we're monetizing it, it ain't coming from anywhere. But it's tough. Podcasting is definitely tough because you can even look at like YouTube. You can go on YouTube now, and if you can get a good audience on YouTube, I mean, like big companies look at that. It's easy to see the numbers of YouTube channels. You can go on there, go to anybody. You see their numbers right there. Where podcasts are tough. Even the tracking ability that we use, which is kind of one of the best ones, still isn't even totally accurate, and nobody else has access to them. So, if you're looking to get review copies of games or things like that, companies are more apt to go to a YouTuber because they just flat out see it. It's right there where they're not getting that from a podcast. So, That's one thing. If you are really getting into this for the money, which I'm not, and nobody's getting like paid a ton of money to do this. Podcasting is not the way to go. I would definitely go like YouTube, create a YouTube channel and bring fresh content over there. And they're very similar in terms of you got to have passion, you got to find the right thing. What is your niche that you can bring to it. But that I think is where you can make more money outside of podcasting. But I just enjoy talk radio. I mean, that to me is why. I listen to talk radio. I listen to podcasts all the time. Like I don't even listen to music really anymore on the radio. It's just either podcasts or like sports talk radio or something like that. The local sports. That's it. Just because to me it's always more engaging, and I like longer form conversation rather than look at a 3-minute YouTube video. Go to the next YouTube video. It's all the way it's broken up. I'm just not that mindset. Maybe that's just my age. We live in a YouTube age, man. People love to see all that stuff, but I'm more of the talk radio type person, and that's why I podcast. So.
Yeah, dude. I mean, podcasts for me, I'm on my feet working 10 hours a day. My hands are busy. I can't sit and watch something. Like, I literally take 2 15-minute breaks a day. That's it. So for my 40 hours a week, man, I've got to go. And so listening to podcasts is what taught me how to do this. It's what helped me meet cool dudes like you. Just like, and and it's really as simple. Like I want to hit on this quickly because we got to wrap here. But as far as reaching out, I mean, it can be as simple as just like, hey man, my tweet to you was, I love your show.
Yeah, literally.
Are you game? And you said yes. And you got any quick tips on just reaching out? I mean, I know you said you were calling websites and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I mean, right now, because even back then when I did it, Twitter maybe was out, but it wasn't a big thing back then. But I mean, just find contact info. Usually, email is probably the best. But if you can get a hold of somebody on Twitter, try that. But if their audience is too big, you're just gonna get lost. So try and find like I said, Activision, Ubisoft. You can just type in Activision Press. You'll find their press site, and a lot of times they'll have forms you can fill out to send it to the PR reps. Chances are they may not get back to you, but there may be that one-shot chance that they might. A lot of indie developers are totally, open to coming on shows. I mean, you yourself, don't you have? You have a lot of indie game developers, and that just reach out to them. The worst they say is no, or they don't get back to you. But you're gonna find somebody that's gonna say yes eventually. So reach out to these people. Send them emails, things like that, because any promotion they can have for themselves. Only just helps their brand, also, and then also creates, a good mindset within the community. Like, I mean, we've had, Deej, the community manager for Bungie's been on our show 3 times. We just had Rob Adams, one of the artists for Destiny, on our show this past week. 2 weeks from now, just a little hint, tune in this week, you'll hear who we're going to have on 2 weeks from now. Yet again, another Bungie person going to be coming on the show. So, just asking and just getting out there, and that it can happen. People just don't think that it can, but I think companies are finally starting to realize the wealth or whatever it is that's out there, like all this content, and just how good it can be for them, because it's literally free advertising for them. I mean, you look back at what Guardian Radio was. I mean, we literally were and still are a somewhat viral marketing thing for Destiny, essentially, because we were talking about it every week, and that companies do see that. They see that it's worthwhile for them to reach out to things like that. So that's what I would tell people, is just whatever you need to do to get a hold of them. Email them, tweet them, whatever. Just do it, because it never hurts to ask. Definitely.
Right. Well, and even hearing Deej on your show, like kind of talk about some of the stuff that he did and whatnot. I don't know about you, but for me personally, when I get to watch like a behind the scenes on a movie or that kind of stuff, or even learning about a certain scene or whatever, you kind of have more of a connection to it. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's why they did that, or whatever, Yep. Sometimes it can be in there's movies, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's movies that are kind of crap that after I've watched the behind the scenes,
right, yeah,
I'm like, that's actually pretty awesome. Like,
yeah,
I know this isn't the greatest flick, but knowing what I know about, having kind of that insider, knowledge, it kind of gives you a greater
different understanding for it, definitely.
Yeah, and appreciation. So,
yep.
All right, bud. Well, we got to wrap this up, but what's the best way that people can connect with you? And I'm actually hoping maybe we could do part 2 of this and get a little more into the technical side of podcasting.
Sure, man, definitely. Best way to get in touch with me, you can follow me personally on Twitter at Mark Turk. That's MarkTurc. You can follow us on Twitter, Guardian Radio, at Guardians of D. which was intentional. Some people always ask that we guard the D. Yes, that was intentional. You can go to our website, theguardiansofdestiny.com, or you can even search out guardianradionetwork.com. Now that links you back to it, and find our show there as well as any of the other podcasts, TTL Party Chat, Warlock School, as well as the Dads of Destiny podcast. The DoD podcast is also on our network. And we do the show live every Monday night on Twitch, twitch.tv/Guardian Radio. We do it at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Tune in live. We have an awesome live group that shows up every week. You know, it's always at least 100 strong. I mean, I think the most we had live on Twitch, we almost hit 1,000 at one point, which is awesome. You know, to see, I mean, this, you know, Twitch feed just going bananas is fantastic. And then you can just find us on our website. You can find the RSS feed to the show. But if you do use iTunes, you know, we're up on iTunes. Just search out Guardian Radio and you'll find us. And it's cool. Apple has actually created the network officially on iTunes. So if you go on there and just search Guardian Radio Network, all the podcast affiliates that are part of us are all right there. And you know, just that was just a bunch of friends of ours. You know, we kind of hooked up, and we were doing Guardian Radio, and one of my co-hosts created his show, Warlock School, which kind of became our more mature, just, you know, funny show, comedy show. And they still talk about Destiny. And then the other shows are just guys that we knew, and they kind of wanted to start a Destiny show, and so we kind of took them in, and we host the show for them and kind of helped them walk through the reins of getting the show running. It's almost like, if you want to say, giving back, basically. It's like, you know, we hear we're getting all this success. Let's help some other people out and get their shows out there. And in the Dads of Destiny, those guys, you know, their show is doing great on iTunes. You know, they're always right up there, too, in the iTunes charts. So it's cool, man. So check that out, you know, guardiansofdestiny.com, or, again, just search out Guardian Radio Network, and you'll find us. That's the best way.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it.
No doubt, man.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Yes. Take care.